It's inconceivable, and it is ludicrous for a man that is morally bankrupt. Is he not the same president? Is that not the same man who benefited from the TransCorp sales up to about 200 or 300 million? Is he not the same man who collected money from donors, contractors, people that, the state had given, contracts to build the presidential library? And so I think it's not qualified to cast aspersions on anybody, considering the fact that he himself carries a lot of baggage. When Obasanjo came out of prison, and Atiku Abubakar worked with other well-meaning people to rehabilitate him before he was eventually presented as president and won the election. Atiku Abubakar was already a billionaire, possibly in dollar terms, not even in naira terms. Before that time, he had never been in government. He had won an election to be governor of Adamawa State before he was tapped to be vice president. He had resources, and everybody knows that in election you spend money, and he put his money to good use, and some of those money was put in rehabilitating former President Obasanjo, and he was not corrupt then. Well, we were aware of conversations that have happened. We are aware of proposals that has been made to former President Obasanjo, in which he was told, he was encouraged, to ensure that he does not disgrace, that his kinsman does not lose his second term election. So we are aware of all of that. It is clear that he is retrieving into his enclave that whole persona of him as a Pan-Nigerian, is giving way now to our local.
Welcome to Naija Unfiltered, a symphony podcast. On today's edition of the program, our guest is a veteran journalist and, of course, a member of the Atiku media team. Mazi Paul Ibe is our guest. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start this way. Straight, your assessment of President Tinubu's 3 years in office from the perspective of the economy, democratic ethos, and, of course, security.
I think it was a couple of days ago, President Tinubu met with the delegation of the Catholic Bishops' Conference. And in the course of the interaction with them, he did say, cheek in tongue, that Nigerians have been hungry before he was born. You and I know that we're not even sure of when Tinubu was born. It's still a subject of controversy. However, that was clearly insensitive of the president. He showed that he didn't care. He didn't give a hoot if Nigerians were hungry. Yes, Nigerians may have been hungry before he was born, but what has been enthroned in the last 3 years plus is a regime of multidimensional hunger and poverty. And added to that was also the hand-wringing attitude of he doesn't have control over population growth. The question that needs to be asked is what policies, as the Tinubu administration initiated to stem population growth. So clearly what we saw was a president who was quarreling with his tools. He asked to be considered for president, notwithstanding the fact that he grabbed, he snapped, and ran away with the presidency. But he still had a responsibility to preside over the affairs of Nigeria. So clearly, the last 3 years plus has been a monumental disaster. Insecurity has been rife. Nobody is safe. We just before I stepped in for this interview, I read a report of a judge who escaped from the window in Castina. Before then, another judge had been kidnapped in Kebbi. For 56 days, the students and teachers of Orire School in Oyo State, were in captivity. And even after they were released, or is it rescued, because what that incident clearly showed, I'm speaking to the issue of the so-called release, or is it rescue, was clearly something happened which suggested that the state appears also to be involved in enabling banditry and terrorism, because one of the teachers, one of those that was released, came publicly to say that the terrorists let them go, and the indication that we had was that they were rescued, and that even in that process, some soldiers, a soldier died and some were wounded. So where is the truth in all of this? So there's been a lot of insincerity, about the way, governance, has been conducted, in the last 3 years. So many. I mean, when are you going to score him, in security is an F, in economy is an F. So what are we talking about? Maybe in borrowing, it probably has an A, triple A.
But it is said that our economy right now, external reserve, has hit $71 billion, and that has been unprecedented. So why don't you at least accede to him or concede to him of doing something in terms of economic reforms?
I recall, a friend of mine once told me that only fools keep their money in the bank. Because while you keep your money in the bank, there are entrepreneurs who are going to take from the bank, turn your money into dividend and profits, and return it back to the bank. So what are we talking about foreign reserves? When clearly even civil servants are unable to be paid. When you borrow money, not for infrastructure development, but to pay salaries, that's what we have had. When we have a situation where a so-called fake agency of a phantom DG who, has been able, by the partnership with state institutions, became legitimized. But make no mistake about it, all of those is just, lies. Clearly, Prince, Adeniyi Adeyemi was a creation of the government of Tinubu. He did not happen. It was no fake. It was real.
We deal with his issue much later on the program.
Yes. So what are we talking about? In which area, which department, which sector has the Tinubu administration fared? The economy is in shambles. It's not working for the average Nigerian, and that's why you could look down on them and tell them that I don't give a hoot whether you're hungry or not. After all, we have all been hungry, long before he was born. You don't talk to Nigerians, like that, especially in an election year. And clearly, I don't think that he's even interested in conducting an election. They have said it. Because one, you see the deliberate policy of the state to decimate, annihilate the opposition parties, using the instrumentality of the state, the security agencies, the judiciary, and all of that, creating crisis in opposition parties, despite the fact that presumably he had control of 30 states, he has the INEC, he has all of that. Still, he doesn't want any of the opposition party to be on the ballot. That's how scared he is. He just wants to be enthroned as the emperor, of Nigeria. And, as journalists, you and I, we covered the Abacha era. We wrote the story. We wrote the end of Abacha. And I believe that whether we are in on sabbatical like I am, who will still write, more stories, including the story of this, current dictatorship, because that's what it is. It's a clear, dictatorship, notwithstanding what they are posturing. They are not interested. Democracy that we purchase at a very, huge cost to human lives, and all of that, it's been eroded. Democratic space has been eroded.
But some people have argued that it is not in the place of the ruling party to lay the bed for the opposition, that the opposition must be prepared to push back whatever the ruling party is also bringing your way.
Yes, the opposition parties are pushing back. But what would they do in a situation where the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has deployed the institutions of the state? How much more pushing back can they do? The very institutions, they are supposed to be, involved in protecting, the rights of everybody, whether of the ruling party or of the opposition. That becomes very difficult, and that is why alerts have been made that clearly this man is not interested in organizing an election. Look at what is unfolding with 16 days, or is it 15 days to the election in Osun State. They've arrested the SSG, whatever it is. This is, you can see clearly, this is the same template that they have adopted, over the year to distract, them from focusing on the election. So I don't think, and it's not just about the opposition parties, it's also about Nigerians. Nigerians truly, except we are lying to ourselves. There have been hues and cries from Nigerians that they want to have a new order. They want to have a change from this administration, that has made life hellish for them. And so people, Nigerians, must stand united. They must be able to, of course, it's also the responsibility of the opposition party to mobilize Nigerians to say, no, we can't continue, on this, trajectory. We cannot have another Abacha on our watch.
Do you think that Nigerians, beyond the opposition parties, even though some persons have accused opposition parties of not doing enough, do you also think that Nigerians are doing enough to hold their leaders accountable in the light of this observation you've made about President Tinubu in the last 3 years?
Well, we are looking up to the election because the election will be indicative of how Nigerians. It will be a sum. It will give a clearer signal, and from data released and quoting a report of the Daily Trust, I think the voter register has reached the 100 million mark, up from about 80-something million in 2023. So like an additional 20 million. It shows clearly those are new voters added.
2023, I think, was 92 million.
Yes. So new voters, have been added, and it shows the desire of Nigerians, to want to ensure that they use, the ballot, becomes their trigger, in 2027.
Of course, there is something that has resurfaced once again, and that is the brickbat between your principal, His Excellency Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and his former boss, President Olusegun Obasanjo. There was an article published by former governor of Ogun State, Olusegun Oshaba, titled "How Obasanjo Deceived Us in 2023," and he accused the former president of betraying the Southwest governors and deceiving them. Obasanjo, of course, in his own reply, expectedly said that his reply was titled "Reply to Your Inaccurate Posture." He blamed your principal for allegedly plotting to undermine his presidency. What's your response to that?
President Obasanjo has been privileged, and he has also taken, advantage opportunities that has come his way. He has been, he has presided over the affairs of Nigeria twice as a military head of state, and as with the dawn of democracy, 2 terms. He worked with Atiku Abubakar. The results of the era was astounding. 15% growth in one of the years, an average of about 7% growth. A lot of the innovations that we have today in the fintech, telecommunications, PENCOM, all due to the policies of that administration. However, I think it's about time, former President Obasanjo stops playing God, because he's not God. And the destiny of anyone, including Atiku Abubakar, is not in his hands. Okay? Let us ask a question. Why will President Obasanjo, former President Obasanjo, drag a dead man, I'm talking about Speaker Naba, into an allegation? Because Obasanjo knows clearly that there will be no rebuttal, except by some miraculous, orchestration, Naba is able to be raised from the dead to be able to answer to those allegations. So clearly, you could see that Obasanjo was very deliberate. He knew what he wanted to achieve. And what was it? To throw stones in an election year, to advance a narrative, of corruption. I mean, that is sad. And it's inconceivable. And it is ludicrous for a man that is morally bankrupt. Is he not the same president? Is that not the same man who benefited from the TransCorp sales up to about 200 or 300 million? Is he not the same man who collected money from donors, contractors, people that, the state had given, contracts to build the presidential library? Is there any provision in our constitution about that? Absolutely, there is none. And so I think it's not qualified to cast aspersions on anybody, considering the fact that he himself carries a lot of baggage. Is he not the same man who wanted to be who wanted to have a third term, if not for the patriotic commitment of people like Atiku Abubakar and former military president Ibrahim Babangida, and a lot of other well-meaning Nigerians that push back, and the heroic work of the Ken Namani Senate that shut down that ignoble agenda of the president. I mean, why didn't all those things, ignoble things that he did, why didn't they find accommodation in the book that he wrote? I think when you point at somebody, 4 of those things are pointed to you. And so, former President Obasanjo should stop playing, God. And I don't know what he wants to make of the twilight, Like I said, I started by outlining the good that he has done, But he seems to be retrieving into his tribal enclave.
But do you blame him? Olusegun Oshaba dragged him into this. If Oshaba did not write, which he felt also maligned his person, it was his response.
Well, he is at liberty to respond. Do you understand? Everybody has a right of reply. But it's not at liberty to drag in Atiku Abubakar into a conversation, something that was obviously, a lie. Because he knew clearly that, late, former Speaker, Naba is not in a position to answer to those allegations. Of course, it was this thing. He didn't, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar didn't give any money to anybody, to impeach him. So those are orchestrations. Those are things that, former President Obasanjo is using to start this, election cycle narrative of corruption and all of that. Was Atiku Abubakar corrupt in 1998-99, when Obasanjo came out of prison and Atiku Abubakar worked with other well-meaning people to rehabilitate him before he was eventually presented as president and won the election? Atiku Abubakar was already a billionaire, possibly in dollar terms, not even in naira terms. Before that time, he had never been in government. He had won an election to be governor of Adamawa State before he was tapped to be vice president. He had resources. And everybody knows that in election, you spend money. And he put his money to good use. And some of those money was put in rehabilitating, former President Obasanjo. And he was not corrupt then.
But he was also accused him that the very first time, let's let's assume
Yes.
that he helped him to emerge as
Yes.
president. He also said in his very first term, he wanted to impeach him.
Who wanted to impeach who?
Atiku Abubakar
Atiku Abubakar
mobilized some persons
Atiku
to
Abubakar,
impeach him.
Atiku Abubakar never initiated any moves for impeachment, against him. Agreed that, before 1990, Obasanjo was not the politician. Atiku Abubakar and so many others were the politician. Atiku Abubakar, it was that mobilized political leaders, stakeholders to be able to ensure that, they won the election of 1999. You understand that? And towards the end of that first term, of course, there were some groundswell, there were movements. Some governors on their own wanted Atiku Abubakar, to present himself for consideration. But considering that Atiku Abubakar was there in the beginning, when the Southwest, because of what happened with the June 12th election, a concession was made to it. Atiku Abubakar did not want to upstage, that arrangement. Of course, Atiku Abubakar did not, eventually sign on to that agenda for him to, to put himself forward for consideration, in the second term and all of that. And it needs to be understood and stressed that that was what played out. I know there is a lot of speculation, rumors about what happened and the rest of it. But it is clear that even up to today, as you and I are speaking, Obasanjo had not forgiven Atiku Abubakar, for that. Obasanjo moved against a lot of those governors, then. Obasanjo also instigated, he was aware, this federal government of Nigeria was aware of the raid on Atiku's house in the United States as a sitting vice president. Okay? There was a lot of instigations and the rest of it. Panels that were set up and all of that. He was, was going to, strip him of his vice presidency. And Atiku had multiple cases in court. Those cases are responsible for the foundational, for deepening our, democracy. Because he won those cases. And that is why a president, a governor cannot just wake up one day and say he has sacked, his deputy. And that was clearly, what happened. So all of these things, the politics, of the second term bid of Obasanjo.
They are all part of politics.
Yes, that second term bid and the third term agenda. Those were the things that, they impacted on the relationship of Atiku Abubakar and that was when Obasanjo started all this narrative of corruption. Like I asked earlier, was he corrupt when he was spending his money on rehabilitating Obasanjo, spending his money, funding the elections of 1999? He was not. So he only became corrupt when Obasanjo had realized that it will advance his interest to tar him. And he has continued. His politics, as we speak now, is vindictive. Already he's getting to the twilight days. What does he want his legacy to be?
Okay. You've worked with His Excellency Atiku Abubakar for a very long time. Has there been any time he's been able to sit with you or with your team to say, hey guys, let me now give you first-hand information of what happened that led to this scenario, this narrative that we've been hearing about, either being too ambitious, wanted to organize governors to take over, Southwest people to take over, things like that. Has there been a time? And did Obasanjo prostrate for Atiku at any point in time?
Of course, when I speak, I'm speaking from a very informed position. A lot of all these stories, has been told, to us in private by Atiku Abubakar. And that is why we've encouraged him. And he's in the process of writing his memoirs. He has a lot of stories, to tell. And we have encouraged him and said, listen, Nigerians also need to hear your own, story. You need to tell it. So I know that, except you are a fly, in a room, it is difficult to know what transpired, in a room. Of course, those are on the outside are telling a lot of stories. Those stories are probably meant to generate, likes, sell newspapers and the rest of it. Let us wait. Don't hear it from me. Okay, let us wait from the man at the center of it. And he will tell clearly the story of what, transpired.
What of a tip? Can you give us a tip?
Did
Obasanjo ever prostrate for him?
He hasn't told me that. And if he hasn't told me that, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what he hasn't told me.
Okay, let's move on and focus on His Excellency Atiku Abubakar's response, in which he accused former President Obasanjo of supporting his kinsman, President Tinubu. And this exchange seemed to have reopened old wounds. What do you think Atiku's response indicates? That he's worried about the outcome of the 2027 elections or what?
It's unfortunate. And, you have also seen Chief Akin Malolo of, Yoruba Ronu Leadership Forum. He had, in his statement of a couple of days ago, I think it was on Sunday, he did make it clearly that, contrary to, the perception that former President Obasanjo is working for, some other opposition party, it's not. That's a small screen. The person that Tinubu is working, Obasanjo is working with, is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Does he look like somebody working for Tinubu? From what you've seen? And his romance with some opposition political leaders?
Listen, we also interact. We've interacted with, leaders of Yoruba extraction at the highest level. And clearly it is, and the statement by Chief Malolo, confirmed that indeed Obasanjo is working for, not even with, is working for Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
For the sake of argument, given the face-off between Obasanjo during his days and President Tinubu during his days as governor, and even some of the things Obasanjo did or said before 2023 elections, which speaks against the candidature of President Tinubu, why should anybody think he should work for him now?
Well, we are aware of conversations that have happened. We are aware of proposals that has been made to former President Obasanjo, in which he was told, he was encouraged, to ensure that he does not disgrace, that his kinsman does not lose his second term election. So we are aware of all of that. And what is playing out now, like I said, it's a confirmation, that he is in bed. Obasanjo is in bed with Tinubu. What do you make of that? You see, what he has done is that we all grew up, and Obasanjo has postured. We know that he is a statesman. We know that he is a Pan-Nigerian and all of that, okay? So what he's doing now is he's free to support anybody that he wants to support. Make no mistake about that. It's in the nature of politics. Nothing is wrong with that. But there's a bit of hypocrisy, in all of this. And it is clear that he is retrieving into his enclave. That whole persona of him as a Pan-Nigerian, okay, is giving way now to our local.
But he reiterated, even in this reply to Oshaba, that he does not play ethnic politics. That's right from the days of ADT now. That he does not play ethnic politics.
That's what I'm saying. That's the point I'm trying to stress. That what he has said, what he has claimed, okay, what he's doing now is a negation, is contrary to that. It's one thing to say something, it's another thing, it's another thing to, do another. He has been saying that he never wanted, he never worked, he never did anything for, didn't want third time. But that is not that. As a journalist, I covered, the politics of that era. And I know of the people that we spoke. They didn't know that we had them on, recorded. And it was confirmed truly that he wanted a third term, which is exactly what is also playing out now. It's not just about the politics of 2027, the election of 2027. The indications are also there that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is also enamored of this same third term thing. Maybe by their dealings now, he will probably learn a thing or two from the master of the third term game himself, Obasanjo.
Since if, for the sake of argument still, if he can supposedly or allegedly retrace his step to work with President Tinubu, it's also possible he could also work with your principal, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. Probably he has not romanced him enough for him to see reason to support Atiku Abubakar. What do you think?
Well, maybe his vindictive politics will not allow him to do that. Like nobody knows the reason, whatever it is, that Obasanjo has against, Atiku Abubakar. And beyond all of the allegations that he has been making about corruption, substantiated allegations about corruption and all of that, we don't know. I mean, while he was globetrotting, and for good reason too, because Nigeria, was a pariah, and is still a pariah in the Tinubu, administration, this era, Atiku Abubakar was holding forth, at home and working. And they had a good run. No doubt about it. The data, the indices are there to show that Obasanjo, Atiku, era, produce a lot of good, for Nigeria.
Okay, if we say that Obasanjo has some very deep-seated animosity against His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, what do you make of Babachir Lawal, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation? All he claims about the principal, during his interview with Symphony TV, he raised a lot of critical and highly controversial issues concerning His Excellency, one of which is that he said that Atiku completely lacks the necessary political appeal, vision, and leadership capacity required to solve Nigeria's contemporary problem. What do you think?
Those are just Turenshi. What the Hausa man will say Turenshi. He's just speaking English. As vice president, Atiku Abubakar was there in the room, formulating policies, articulating policies, implementing policies. The same Atiku Abubakar, even as out of office, went back to school to pick up a master's degree from University of Ruskin to improve himself. I recall a conversation with one of his children, and it was what encouraged him to go back to school. And he said, if my dad can do this at this age, why can't I? Atiku Abubakar has been involved in the business, first of all, as a public servant in the customs. His records are there for distinction until he went into private business, founding companies, making so much out of it. With his vision, he saw the direction of the economy. He invested in the oil and gas sector. It was Intel that was before then, it was Nicotes. And contrary to what I heard, one of the spokesperson of Tinubu, there are so many of them, out there, at times it's even difficult to keep a track on, who is saying what. And that it was illegal for Atiku Abubakar to have founded, Nicotes, which blossomed into, Intels, while still, in the customs. But he didn't, that person was wrong. He didn't know that in 1979, the 1979 Constitution, didn't have any provision for that. You can found a company. But what happened was that Atiku Abubakar merely bought shares in then Nicotes. He was not a director, as envisaged. As this Constitution said, he was not running, he was not a CEO. It was only when he left the customs that he became a director, in Nicotes that later became, the Intels, which was a leading, oil and gas, logistics, company. So Atiku Abubakar has been in the, in the business of running things, of, being able to put together, a team. He knows how to bring people, together. He understands, this country, very well. So what else do you need? What type of skills do you need to be able to run, things? He's not a bigot, by the way. Unlike the gentleman, you spoke about. Clearly, you can see bigotry running through everything that, he's saying. Don't forget that when Atiku Abubakar was tapped as vice president, that now paved the way for Boni Haruna to be governor. You knew what happened. They didn't want Boni, Haruna. Atiku Abubakar stood by him. He not only finished his first term, he had a second term. And the reason why Boni was rejected then was because of the fact that he comes from a certain, he worships in a way that is different from the majority of, of the people who didn't want him. But Atiku Abubakar said no. And he had his way. And Boni Haruna presided over the affairs of that state. So what are we talking about?
Okay, beyond name calling, provide us with cogent reasons why former SGF Babachir Lawal is wrong in his submission about former Vice President Atiku Abubakar in his now viral recent interview on this platform.
But that's who former SGF is. For him, it's an industry. We learned that he was one of those. They promised multiple persons of the Christian, extraction in the APC. They were promised, the vice presidential, ticket. Babachir Lawal was also one of those, and he was trying to ensure that he lived up to the billing for the consideration. So the agenda was to destroy Atiku Abubakar as much as he possibly can. Because what Babachir Lawal is saying about him, clearly a lot of Nigerians, those who have been in this country in the last 3 decades or more, know clearly that that's not who Atiku Abubakar is. I'm a Christian. I'm from Imo State. I have been with Atiku Abubakar. His medical doctor, chief medical, doctor, is from Anambra State. He's an Igbo person. He's surrounded by a mini Nigeria. Those are measures how you know a man who interacts with, the people that he prioritizes. So that's not who Atiku Abubakar is.
BD Lawal also explicitly predicted that Atiku Abubakar will score 0 and lose woefully if he contests the 2027 presidential election, and advised voters to completely look past Atiku and consider viable alternatives. What's your take on this?
Well, the last time that I checked, of the 100 million plus voters, I don't see, although I'm here to review the list, but even if there are other Babachir Lawals, I'm sure it's just a coincidence of name, meaning that Babachir Lawal will have just 1 vote.
You worked for His Excellency for quite a long time. Who is Atiku Abubakar?
Atiku Abubakar, it's a very, very, very extremely compassionate individual. When I parted ways with this day, and I was on my way to Ilorin. A friend of mine's brother was going to, be married, and I had left this day, and so my friend said, "Let's go to Ilorin." And I was on my way to Ilorin when I started receiving calls, and I didn't know that what has happened to me had become a subject of discussion in some circles. And the proposition was made for me to work with Atiku Abubakar. Of course, as a journalist, I had interacted with him. I had interviewed him about 2 or 3 times. And so I knew him from that distance. And, I started to have discussions about, some people. I know what my mother-in-law told me then. And even Professor Maurice Iwu, it's amazing. He shouldn't have good words about him. But it was one of those that I spoke to. And he said, "Go ahead and work with him. He's a good man." And I did. And since 2010 to date, I've come to discover, those things. Extremely compassionate, individual. A man who is not interested in you because of how you worship, what tongue that you speak, where you come from. A man who is given to, excellence, prioritizes it over and above, any other thing. That's the man that I've come to know. And, many a time, I recall, a couple of times when I was in church, and Abubakar would call, and then it now dawned on him that it's Sunday. He said, I'm sorry. Please call me when you're done. Respect. Mutual respect. In a room, Atiku Abubakar will only speak after everybody has spoken. A good listener. Very receptive to good ideas. Brilliant ideas. That's the man that I know. And that's the man that I believe that Nigerians should have the benefit, of experience.
Is he desperate to rule Nigeria?
I don't think he is.
Why is he consistently running to rule Nigeria?
Because it's not how many times a man falls. You see, the Atiku Abubakar experience should be studied by political scientists. It's the audacity of not giving up. It's not about that he is desperate. It's the audacity of not giving up. The audacity of picking yourself up. Each time that you fall, dust yourself and move on. That's not desperation. Atiku Abubakar wants to give back to a society that he has said repeatedly has given him so much. Free education, as a youngster, opportunity to work, in the customs, opportunity to be considered for, governorship and won an election in Adamawa State, eventually tapped as vice president, made a good job of it. He has been out of government since 2007. That's 19 years. Next year is going to be 20 years. But continues to be relevant and continues to be the issue in our politics. It's the tenacity of the man, the audacity of the man, to keep his eyes on the ball, never wavering. And we've had, we've had precedents like that. Even President Muhammadu Buhari, he contested 5 times. In the United States, who is his, president?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln contested multiple times. President Donald Trump, even after he lost, the election to Biden, he still, contested, again, and that's why he's president, and stayed 4 years away. Learned 1 or 2 things, from staying away, and then he came back good and had a, landslide, victory. I think Atiku Abubakar needs to be we need to commend him for keeping the faith, for standing up each time that he falls. And we must not erroneously describe that as desperation, because certainly that's not what it is.
All right, if he's not desperate, what is the pathway to victory for him and Amechi presidency? Provide a robust analysis. Let's just see his pathway to victory. Let's assume now that we have to study his tenacity. We have to study, it's not how many times a man falls, but how many times he rises. What is the pathway?
There is a pathway. People assume that because some persons, had left the ADC coalition, and that, no, it didn't. The party was already formed. What happened, was that some other persons came on board, as at the time, that they did. But by then, the foundation has been cast and all of that. I'm only adding to an existing, robust structure. So our support, his support in the northern base, the 19 northern states, of the country, it's solid. Okay? Even in the states where people think that we are vulnerable, we are not. Because a lot of people are beginning to have a rethink about what is going on. and about the viability of the Atiku Abubakar Amechi, thicket. I'm speaking about the Southeast. Yes, our people, my people are very Republican in nature, but they're also learning to ensure that they align. There has to be an alignment. For there to be to create a pathway for a Southeast Igbo president. And so that is what is going to play out, even in the Southeast, where people think that it will be our underbelly. No, it's not going to be. We're going to make a lot of progress, in the Southeast and the South areas. And that's it. Professor Morris, who says, is the philosophy of palming 4 from 6, 4 geopolitical zones. He told Atiku Abubakar that a long time ago, and I recall that is coming to play 4 geopolitical zones. We are very confident, of that.
Which are the zones?
The 3 zones of the south of the north, the south, and the southeast. We will make our 25% clear, notwithstanding whatever it is that Tinubu throws at us.
Even with Obi from the south, Tinubu from the southwest?
Like I told you, I said there is a realignment that are currently, ongoing. I mean, we have people who are there, foot soldiers there, in the southeast, in those remote communities. And there are a lot of people who are rethinking some of the, the moves that they have taken in the last couple of, months.
How do you see the chances of Atiku in the north when virtually all the governors in the north are in APC with President Bola Tinubu? How do you think they are going to work for him? And how do you think it's going to be easy for him in the north?
Yes, those governors are stakeholders, major stakeholders in their zone. But they have one vote. Okay? They have
you
one
also
vote.
know Nigeria's election style. They have one vote, yes. What of their influence? What of their aids?
Make no mistake about it. When in 2023, did Obi did they have governors? Okay. So Atiku Abubakar is faced with the same, Atiku Abubakar and the ADC are faced with the same scenarios. It's the power of the people. Listen, except if Nigerians are not as hungry as Tinubu is making them out to be. But I believe they are. And with the fire in their eyes and the hunger in their belly, they're going to cast their votes. They're going to protect those votes. They're going to ensure that whatever it is that they have said on the ballot is what will manifest, eventually. And a lot of mobilization is ongoing, towards that end, up to down to the polling unit, not even the ward. That's where it's going to be. The protection, unit for the votes will be at the polling, the PUs, the polling units.
All right, let's turn to some developing stories in the polity. Our national budget is supposed to be a very serious document, protected, watched over, managed from the budget office to the Ministry of Finance through the National Assembly. But lately, we've been inundated with Netflix kind of fee, where one individual was said to have conned everybody from the presidency through all layers of the civil service to even get a budget inserted for the agency now dubbed a fake agency. How can a single person run this kind of scam?
The only thing that is fake in all of this is the Tinubu-led APC administration. I know that there is an ongoing process to unravel what may have happened. But the truth is that this gentleman did not wake up one day, go to the Federal Secretariat to get a space, prime space. He didn't wake up one day and appointed himself as the DG of the Presidential Foreign
Intervention
Information
Promotion
Council. He didn't do that. He didn't insert himself, in the budget. He didn't have 6 directors, that were sent his way, about 300 staff that he requested. He didn't do all of that. Okay? It was not a coincidence that he met with the EFCC chairman, that he met with the deputy speaker of the Federal House of Representatives. It was not a coincidence that he was meeting diplomats, that he was on the entourage of government, former vice, the vice president was in his entourage. So the question is, who is fooling who? Who is the fake? Who is the phantom? In this case, we need to ask ourselves, is it possible? Like you said, it's beginning to look like a Netflix, movie. And I hope they're able to get to the bottom of this. And that is not the only controversy that has dogged the Tinubu administration. That has been their signature tune.
The House committee, the Yusuf Gadi-led committee investigating or probing this particular matter, has concluded their sitting, establishing the fact that the man's appointment letter was fake. Now, should we be more interested with only the appointment letter being fake and the man himself not being given an opportunity to appear? Same as the chief of staff to the president, Gbajabiamila, not also appearing before the committee, and the excuse that there is a court order restraining the man from leaving the custody of the police to make any appearance. Does it hold water for you?
Something is going on. All of this is being orchestrated. There is a deliberate, about it. Why wouldn't Gbajabiamila, the man at the center of the Gbaja Gate, why wouldn't he come to speak? A man who has been, allegedly accused of collecting 400, million naira. Yes, million naira. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't Prince Adeyemi, why wouldn't he, the House wants him, an investigation, it's an investigative panel of the House. Why wouldn't that? So, clearly, if those principal, actors, in this saga have not come to tell their own side of the story, it will be difficult to to arrive at a conclusion. Exactly like you rightly said, we cannot just use the appointment, letter and the rest of it. What we had asked for, and we had hoped, independent probe. You see, you can't be a judge in your own, in your own matter. The most important staff of the president, is chief of staff. Okay? And now all of these institutions, all of this ongoing, all of these investigations and the rest of it, just also, you see that is the presidency. So how can we, get the honest truth about what, may have transpired, in all of this? Because look at it, layers and layers and layers of the CBN, the EFCC, ICPC, the police, the government of the Federation, Office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, the head of the civil service, all of these people. That this man was so smart and he was able to scam everybody.
Maybe we should give him a national award.
And don't forget, he met with the chairman of the EFCC and the deputy speaker of the Federal House of Representatives. And nobody was able to blow a whistle. All of these organizations that I've outlined, nobody saw and said, okay, this man, at what point did they realize that he was a scam? At what point?
It was said that he had operated almost for 1 year.
They're just trying to make him a scapegoat. The man has been there. He was a creation. Didn't they also allege that the FPC, IPC was created by former President Muhammad Buhari, and that is a lie. I don't speak for Buhari. The people who do have come out to say clearly that Buhari did not establish any organization, like that.
Let's return to 2027 elections. The general election, presidential election is February next year. And is there any coordinated plan to prevent expected or fear of Nigerians compromising the elections like we saw in 2023? As calling it simply saying rigging the election in case INEC don't live up to their words to guarantee Nigerians free, fair, and credible election. Is there any coordinated plan to avert anything of that in 2027?
There is. Already, the recent pronouncement, by United States government, they are watching. And everybody is watching. And that is what we have actually been calling for. There needs to be more than a passing interest. You see, Nigeria is so crucial, so key. If anything happens in this territory, okay, it will have reverberations across the West African sub-region. Because there are more people, more persons, more population in Nigeria than the rest of the West African country, put together. So, and in this area when you have a crisis all over the place, in the sub-region, on the continent, and all over, it is important that everything be done before the election to ensure that President Bola Tinubu draw him in his ears for him to recognize how important Nigeria is and not to do anything untoward, anything that will lead to any form of crisis, including rigging the election. And so there is an interest already, both locally and internationally, to ensure. And the same day that President Tinubu met with the Catholic bishops, he also heard him speaking for INEC. No, Tinubu should not be speaking for INEC. Tinubu should be assuring Nigerians and international community that his government would deliver on a free, fair, and credible election. It's not in his place to be the spokesperson, for INEC, and that is even enough reason for concern, to Nigerians that that's not what you should be, that's not what is expected of him, So we have a responsibility as Nigerians. And the leadership of the opposition are also not just mobilizing Nigeria, they're also mobilizing the international community.
Do you have confidence in INEC to conduct free, fair, and credible election in 2027?
Well, INEC has started on the wrong footing. It was very clear that they were behaving, I'm talking about the Amupiton INEC, behaving like they're also standing on Tinubu's mandate, but with enough pressure and enough vigilance, not really because they probably want to do the right thing. It is our responsibility to compel them, to let them know that we will not settle for less. What we want, the opposition are not asking for a handout. They are not asking, INEC to write results that be favorable to them. What they are asking for is that INEC and the government provides a level playing field. Okay? A level playing field where one vote will be equal to one vote. Not some, one vote will become 1,000 votes. That's what we're calling. So it is our responsibility as Nigerians, as stakeholders in the Nigerian project, to put pressure, to be vigilant, and to let INEC and the President Bola Tinubu administration to know that they will not settle for less.
Let's wrap up this way. What are the three most dangerous political developments that could destabilize the country between now and 2027?
The election. One, the election. 2, the election. 3. You see, I don't want to believe that President Bola Tinubu will want to wrap up his 4 years of impoverishing Nigeria, of deepening poverty, of creating more hungry people. When he took over in 2023, we had 115 million poor persons. 2023. Now, as you and I speak, it's about 144 million. About 25 or so million have been added, to that. I don't want to think that after having made a mess of the opportunity that he has, that he wants to sign off with an election that will throw up crisis, in the country. Like I said, I urge President Tinubu to borrow a leave from President Goodluck Jonathan, whom he had encouraged to resign in 2012, when security then, the Chibok girls and all of that, and so the question is, whatever is good for the geese is good for the, is for the gander. So what is it that had happened in 2012 that is not happening now? It's not just enough to say that opposition leaders are involved in the crisis, in the crisis. You heard Akpabio was saying it. The question is, what have you done about that? Who and who of these opposition leaders have you brought to book? Because if there's anybody who is involved in it, this insecurity is affecting all of us. Prosecute them. Arrest them. They don't have any immunity. So it's all politics. And what President, one of the things that Bola Tinubu has called an AAA is playing politics, prioritizing politics over and above governance. So I want to believe that what he can do, to ensure that Nigerians at least remembers him for one good thing, is a free, fair, and credible election in 2027.
Finally, speak to Nigerians. As we approach 2027 elections, what should Nigerians do to guarantee that their votes count?
Well, let me ask Nigerians at this point, are you better off, now in 2020, towards the middle of 2026 than you were in 2020, by May of 2023? Are you better off? Of course you're not. More of us have been thrown into the poverty, trap, about 25 million in 3 years that, Tinubu took over. The question I want to ask you is that, what sort of government, what sort of life do you want, after May 29 of 2027? Those things, those are what you need to reflect, Can you pay for your hospital bills, of your children? Are you able to send them to school? Notwithstanding all of the hoopla about the NEL fund, because they have, the school fees and the rest of it has been upped. It's what they are giving with the right hand, they're taking back, with the left hand. So those are the things that you need to consider. Irrespective of tribe, of tongue, of religion, we all shop from the same, market. There is no separate market for an Igbo person, a Yoruba person, an Hausa person, an Ibibio person, a Tiv person, an Efik person. None. We all shop from the same, market. And the cost of living is high. It's getting worse by the day. We know, we have confirmed, that in some places in this country, especially the northernmost part of Nigeria, food meant for animals have become a substitute, an alternative for some Nigerians. We deserve better. That is not why, we have a government in place. Which means that our voters' card must become the trigger. It must become our arsenal to ensure that we oust and we send President Bola Ahmed Tinubu back to Iragbiji or Lagos, which one is convenient, or even to France, if he chooses to live outside of this country. Those are the considerations that we need to make.
Thank you very much for being our guest on today's edition of the program.
Thank you so much for having me.